Hey there guys! So, as it turns out, Booktubeathon did teach me something. It taught me that if I want to get a TBR done, I have to challenge myself to read that TBR, to plan it out, to say this is what you're reading and this is what you have to read. And so, I have completely redone my strategy with my PopSugar reading challenge. If you've been watching my monthly wrap-ups, then you know that I've been making moderate progress towards the actual reading goals that I have, and in fact I did really well in July, but July is like the only month since February that I've done any solid progress on that reading challenge, and here's why. I'm fully aware that you can't actually see what I'm holding here, but this was my original PopSugar reading challenge list, and it just listed all of the categories in the black marker here, and then I would write underneath it the title of the book that I used for that category. And so kind of when I read a book, I would go to this list and see if it matched up. Now I did in the beginning of the year kind of make a list for my choices for this. Some of them Michaela and I are reading together, for instance, and I know what those are, but for other categories I just kind of left them blank, and I was like, oh, you know, if I read one of those, then I'll read one of those. Well, no. It's August and I'm only just over halfway done with this list because this method wasn't working for me, and until I move in with Michaela, some of those other books aren't going to get read, and so there are a bunch that I need to read on my own, and I needed to think of them, come up with them, and do them and say, yes, this is what I'm reading. So what we're here to talk about today is this list. It's my PopSugar halfway reading challenge list, and you'll see all of this blue pen is because these are books that I've said this is what I'm reading for this category. And so this TBR is going to be a really rapid fire succession of the challenges I still have left to complete and the book that I want to complete them with. I'm not saying that these won't change, but this is my challenge to myself to say, you gotta finish this, so get it done. The first challenge that I still have to complete is a National Book Award winner, and since the beginning of this year, I have said that I want to read Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates for this. I've heard so much about this book, and I really desperately want to read it. There's no reason I shouldn't have. It's at my library. Just gotta get there and get it done. And I have to get faster at doing these rapid fire. The next challenge is a book set in your home state, and I really wanted to do this with something from my bookshelf back here that I haven't read yet, and so I actually went through a bunch of them looking for ones that were set in New York State, and that's actually harder than I thought it was going to be, but in the end I came up with Starling by Leslie Livingston. I've had this on my shelf for forever. I think the whole series is out now, but it's time to read it, and as it so happens, it's set in my state, New York. So here we go. My book translated to English that I still have to read, I haven't read because it's one of the ones Michaela and I are doing together, and it is After Dark by Murakami. I don't actually know much about this book, but Michaela and I are going to read it together, and I think Taylor's going to be in on it too, so basically what we're saying is it's going to be amazing because we'll all be reading it together. So that one I do have a pause on until I move in, just because it's probably going to be easier that way, but I'm working on it. Same thing actually goes as well for my romance set in the future. Michaela and I chose the Book of Strange New Things, and this was Michaela's find, Michaela's pick. I can't actually remember the author off the top of my head, but when the picture appears beside me, you'll be able to see it. And again, Michaela's pick, but I trust her in most things. Most living things, book things, we tend to be different, but I think that it looks really interesting, so I'm excited to read that one. I have changed my book that is becoming a movie this year due to some of my friends' opinions on this author in this upcoming movie, and so my book that is going to be a movie this year, I want to read A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I've seen the trailer, it looks amazing, and it actually made me want to read the book, because you know that you have to read the book and then watch the movie. You can't do it backwards. Unless it's Lord of the Rings. I also still have to read a self-improvement book, and I want to read The Art of Asking. I didn't know the author of this book when Michaela suggested it to me, but it turns out that she's apparently Neil Gaiman's wife, Amanda Palmer. And I love the cover, I love the theory behind the book, and I know Michaela's already read it, so I need to get on that. My book written by a celebrity is kind of cheating because there's also a book written by a comedian, and so those two things I still have to do. So for a book written by a celebrity, I want to read Yes Please by Amy Poehler, and then for my book written by a comedian, I want to read Bossy Pants by Tina Fey. So gonna get a double dose of those two wonderful ladies, but I'm really excited because I actually have wanted to read both of those things for a really long time. So this is my chance to get on that. For my science fiction novel, I actually also wanted to pick off of the books that I haven't read from behind me, and I don't have a lot of science fiction back there, believe it or not. So what I ended up choosing was Origin by Jessica Corey. I have had this for a while, I've started it, I haven't finished it, and so I want to get this done for this challenge because it seems interesting. I've liked the ideas of a lot of Jessica's books actually, but I haven't gotten around to them. And again, I've had this since Origin was out in hardcover looking like this, so time to actually read it now. I am cheating on a book recommended by a family member. I am instead going to substitute that with a book recommended to me by most of all of the important people in my life, and that is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I have not read this yet, but it is the favorite book of a lot of my favorite people in this world. This isn't even my copy. I was lent this because I was told I needed to read it, and the person who lent me this took my copy of Queen of the Tearling and is already reading that, so I'm behind. I need to get on that and really finally see what this book is all about because I've heard so much about it. It was harder than I thought to find a book with my occupation. You know, the main character has my occupation. I'm a waitress, and it really shouldn't be this hard. So I went and I searched books that have waitresses in them, and I actually found a book called The Waitress, and it looks really quirky and really cute, and I don't know even how I'm gonna get my hands on a copy of this because I just like Google searched it and found it, but it seems like one of the cutest like little book blurbs I've seen in a while, so I really want to make sure that I read that for my choice there. I really wasn't sure how to pick my book that takes place during the summer until I went to CHLA, and if you remember I had a TBR from that conference as well, and one of the really big things for me was the graphic novel This One Summer, which has also won a bunch of awards. And you know, This One Summer takes place during the summer, and it's the perfect opportunity to A, widen my reading and make sure I am reading more graphic novels, which I don't hate, I'm coming around to them, but also read this book that's won like prizes across the board in children's and young adult literature. So really important book that I can't wait to read. My book and its prequels pick may actually be familiar to you because I've actually already read The Mirror King by Jodi Meadows. I also want to read the 4 prequel novellas that came out before this book. They're actually before The Orphan Queen, the first book in this duology, but if you watch my review then you'll know that I really wasn't a fan of the way that the plot was handled in this book, and it really cooled down my desire to read the prequels for this series, so I have to get back on that and really read those, and then I want to reread this novel and do kind of a re-review and see if, like I thought in my review, if reading those novellas will change my thought process on this book. So that should be really interesting, but I have to get up the urge again. I also still need to read a murder mystery, and I'm kind of cheating again here. I don't like murder mysteries. I don't like scary novels. I find mystery novels often very tropey, but I looked through the books behind me and found Unspoken by Sarah Reese Brennan, which I have, and I've wanted to read for a while. I find Sarah Reese Brennan to be a really funny person, but I haven't read enough of her work, so I've had this for a while, and it's kind of a murder mystery. There's a death involved. When I looked up young adult murder mysteries, this came up, so someone else has considered this a murder mystery, so that's what I'm running with, and it'll get one more book off my shelf that I've actually read. I also still need to read a book of poetry, and while I probably won't review this on the blog because I'm bad with poetry, I have had in my possession for a while Behind My Eyes by Lee Young Lee. This is a very short collection of poetry. I actually met the poet while I was at school. I took a couple of classes from him about writing poetry and heard him read aloud. but I never actually read the whole collection, so I need to get on that, and so I can complete that challenge as well. My classic from the 20th century really wasn't that hard to pick because I was at a writing camp for a couple of summers, and all of these writers that I really admired kept talking about Snow Crash as this seminal piece of literature that we should all read. And so when I looked up classics from the 20th century to start thinking about this section, that came up, and of course it had to be my pick. I've been meaning to read it forever, and this is a really good opportunity to actually do that. I also have to read an autobiography, and I don't like nonfiction autobiographies. I can sometimes find them boring or self-aggrandizing. So when I went and I searched autobiographies, and some of the most popular ones that came up, Stephen King's On Writing was one of them, because technically it counts. It's also on writing, but it's also an autobiography. So totally counting that as my autobiography, because again, been meaning to read that for a while as a writer, having heard so much about it, but now is the time. And finally, for my satirical book, which I still need to read, I'm going to be reading the classic Catch-22. My brother has a copy that he had to read for high school, but I never had to read it for high school, so I'm stealing his copy, although it's not in my room yet, and I'm going to read that as my satirical book. And I think that's Michaela's pick as well, so that's another one that we'll be reading together. Alright, I don't know how many books I just went through, but it was a lot. So thank you for sticking with me. If you have read any of the books on my list, please let me know what you think about them. Obviously, these picks aren't set in stone. They're just what I have to challenge myself now. And if you think that there's a book that I should read first, or a book that maybe I shouldn't read at all, I would really like to know, because while I really want to complete the PopSugar reading challenge, I also really want to enjoy myself. So again, down in the comments, wherever you are, talk to me, let me know what you think, because I really take all your comments to heart, and it really helps me find books that I'm interested in reading, as opposed to books that I'm just reading to put another check mark in my notebook. So, I feel like I've been talking really fast this whole video. I'm done now. You've made it. Thanks, guys. Bye.